In the second week of November, 1913, a storm crossed the Great Lakes that the men who lived through it spent the rest of their lives trying to describe. It blew at hurricane force for hour after hour without resting. It stacked fresh water into waves as tall as a 3-story house. It threw snow so thick that a sailor standing at the stern of his own ship could not see her bow. 500 feet away, the newspapers came to call it the White Hurricane. The men who sailed the lakes called it other things. Quietly, among themselves, "You are going to spend that night aboard a steel freighter on Lake Huron. She is 500 feet long, loaded deep with coal, bound north on one of the last runs of the season. There are 25 people aboard her, and you are the youngest of them. And when the storm finds her, you will be exactly where the title says you will be, in your bunk, asleep." What follows is built from the records of that night, from the ships that answered their names afterward, and from the ones that did not. The ship is real. The storm is real. The bunk you are lying in belonged to somebody. Turn your lamp down now. Get under the blanket. This is a long one. And out there in the dark, the water is already moving. At first, it does not feel like the ship is moving. It feels like the wall beside your bunk has pulled away from you. You are lying on your back with your eyes shut, half in a dream about a porch, and the steel wall your shoulder has rested against every night for 2 months leans slowly out from under that shoulder, and your body rolls to follow it. And the dream lets go of you somewhere on the way over. You put your hand flat on the mattress and wait. The ship comes back. She always comes back. You can feel her find the bottom of the roll, hang there a second, and start up the other side. And everything loose in the cabin goes with her. Your boots slide under the table and knock the far leg. A tin cup gets loose from somewhere, crosses the floor with a sound like a small sled, hits the opposite wall, and comes back faster than it left. Above your head, on the deck, boots are running, more than one pair. Running has a sound, and this is heavier than running. This is men moving fast in wet weather gear, and one of them stops right over your bunk, and there is a pause up there that you do not like. And then he goes on, somewhere forward. A bell rings twice, small, bright, far away. That is the engine telegraph in the wheelhouse talking to the engine room below you. And you have been aboard long enough to know that nobody rings that bell at night in open water unless something has changed. Then the whole ship leans into the dark and takes her time about coming back. This one is different. You can feel the difference lying down with your eyes shut. She goes over, and she keeps going, past the place where she has stopped every time before. And the frame of your bunk takes your weight, and the cup crosses the floor again, and down through the mattress, down through the steel. You can hear the cargo shift its feet in the holds. Thousands of tons of coal settling half an inch all at once. A long, low grumble under the whole length of her. She hangs there. You count. You get to 4. Then she comes up, slow, like a tired man straightening his back, and the water goes hissing along the plates a few inches from your ear. And on the other side of that steel is Lake Huron, and the steel is thinner than your hand. It is the night of the 9th of November, 1913. You are 18 years old. This is your bunk on your ship, and you have slept through heavy weather before. Every man back aft has slept through heavy weather before. Lee, still. The night is long, and we have all of it. You open your eyes to the dark and listen the way you have learned to listen on this boat, sorting the sounds into the ones that belong and the ones that do not. The engine belongs. It is right below you, turning the way it has turned since Ohio, and the beat of it comes up through the bunk frame steady as a heart. The wind belongs. Most of it. It has been out there all evening. The man in the bunk below yours does not belong. He is awake, you can tell, because his breathing is the breathing of a man lying still on purpose. And when the ship starts her next roll, you hear him move, quiet. And what he is doing down there in the dark is pulling on his boots. He has not lit the lamp. He is doing it by feel, one boot and then the other. And he is doing it. Lying down, you come up on one elbow to ask him. Before you get the words out, the cabin door opens. There is a man in it with a hurricane lantern turned low, and the light swings with the ship. And the wind comes down the passageway behind him, cold enough to reach your face across the room. He does not shout. That is the part you will remember. He stands in the door with the lantern, and he says it the way a man says the time of day. Everybody dressed? Everybody up? Right now. The evening before that, the ship is lying at the coal dock in Lorain, Ohio, and the whole aft end of her smells like supper. You have to go back there, to Saturday night, to know what this boat is when she is herself. A ship in a storm is one thing. A ship at her supper is the true thing. And this is the last ordinary meal anybody aboard her is going to sit down to for a while. And every man at the table walks in believing there will be 1,000 more just like it. The mess room sits in the stern, one deck below the galley stovepipe, and it is the warmest room on the Great Lakes. There is a long table with a rail around the edge of it, screwed down, and oilcloth on the table, and a bench along each side worn smooth by 20 years of the same trousers. The heat comes off the galley range through the bulkhead and the coal stove in the corner both at once. And there is a line strung behind that stove where somebody's socks are always drying. Always. It is a law of the boat. And tonight there are socks on it, and one wet mitten with a hole in the thumb. Supper is beef, and boiled potatoes, and canned tomatoes stewed with bread in them, and coffee that has been getting stronger since 4 o'clock. The cook runs that room. He is an old man with white stubble and forearms like a dockhand, and he has cooked on the lakes longer than some of the crew has been alive. And everybody aboard from the old man on down calls him Cookie to his face and the cook when he is out of earshot. He has rules. Nobody sits down wet. Nobody reaches over the pans. The coffee pot rides in its own iron ring bolted to the range, because a loose pot on a lake boat is a scald looking for a leg to happen to. If you want more, you ask, and there is always more. And he will fill your plate the third time while telling you that you are eating the company into the ground. You are the deckhand, youngest aboard, second season, and your place is the end of the bench by the door. And you eat like it is work, and the cook watches. You do it with something in his face that he would deny was pleasure. The crew comes to the table in shifts as the watches change. And Saturday night at the dock, they are talking about what crews talk about in the second week of November. The end. The season is nearly done. A few more trips. Maybe 2. Maybe 3, if the weather holds and the company is greedy. And then the boat goes to winter layup, and the whole floating town of her shuts down. And every man walks off her with his season's pay in his coat, and the whole white winter in front of him, and not one thing he has to do before spring. Reggie is going to Cleveland. He is one of the firemen. A wide, quiet man with coal dust, worked so deep into the creases of his knuckles that soap quit arguing with it years ago. And he has a girl in Cleveland. He has mentioned maybe 40 times without once saying her name. And the deck crew has quit teasing him about her because he takes it so calmly there is no sport in it. He is getting married in the spring. He says it again tonight. To his plate. The way a man checks that his wallet is still there. The second mate is buying land. Everybody knows the parcel by heart. 40 acres outside Alpena with a creek through the low corner. And he goes over it again. And somebody asks about the creek. And he says, the creek is the whole point. A man wants water he can see the bottom of. And Sully says winters cost him more than sailing does. And lets it go at that. Sully is the wheelsman on your watch. He is somewhere past 50. Nobody asks how far past it. And he has steered Lifeboats for 30 years. Through the big blow of 1905, and through ice and fog and everything else the lakes keep in their pockets. And this is his last season. He has made no speech about it. He said it once. In October, standing at the wheel. The same voice he uses for course headings. And that was the whole announcement. He has a left hand that goes numb on him in the cold now. You have seen him work it open and shut against his leg when he thinks the wheelhouse is watching the water. And you have never said anything. And neither has he. The old man eats forward. Most nights. Up in the officer's mess, under the wheelhouse. Tonight, he comes aft. He does that sometimes at the dock. And nobody makes anything of it out loud. And every man at the table sits a little different once he is in the room. He is a small man, quick in his movements, gray to the edges of him. He hangs his cap on the hook inside the door. And he eats. And he listens to the mate go on about the 40 acres. And near the end of it, he says, the creek will flood every April. And the mate says, yes, sir. That low corner is no good till June. And the old man nods, like a man hearing a fair price. And that is the longest conversation anybody gets out of him tonight. His boots are dry. They are always dry. 25 people on this boat, and the water finds every one of them. And the deck crew swears the old man walks between the raindrops. And the truth is simpler, and nobody says it. He has been out here so long, he knows where the water is going to be before the water does. All evening, the coal goes rattling into her. You can hear it through the wall. Car after car coming down the dock shoots into the holds. A long rushing roar, and then quiet, and then the next one. Nearly 10,000 tons of Ohio going into the belly of the boat, bound for the head of the lakes where it will keep somebody's town alive all winter. The trimmers work her level. Hold by hold. Late season cargo pays. That is the arithmetic of November. And everybody at this table knows the other side of that arithmetic. And nobody spends any breath on it. Once. near the end of supper. The porter says he heard the glass was low in Cleveland. Somebody says it is November. That is the whole conversation about the weather. 4 words, and the coffee going around again. When the plates are cleared, the cook washes them in a pan of water hot enough to hurt, and dries them. And then he does the thing you noticed your first week aboard, and have watched him do every night since. He sets each plate back on the shelf rail, face down. Cups too, mouth down on their hooks. The whole shelf of white china turned over like a field of small round backs, riding out the night that way. And the first time you ever saw it, you asked him why. And he looked at you the way he looks at a pot that is boiled over. A November boat keeps her dishes face down, he said. That was the whole answer, and he has never added one word to it. And tonight he turns the last plate over and snaps the rail bar into place across the shelf, and hangs the towel on its nail, and puts out the galley lamp behind him. Sometime before midnight, the ship comes off the dock. You are in your bunk when she does it, and you know it without waking all the way you know things aboard now. The lines go, the deck trembles a new way. The dock lights slide across the cabin wall through the porthole glass, one after another, slower than a man walks. Then the last light goes by, and the engine settles into her long traveling beat. And under you, the whole town of her, the socks on the line, and the plates on their faces, and the 24 other souls of her, goes out past the breakwater into the open dark of Lake Erie, heading for the rivers. Heading north, the water is flat, the night is quiet. You sleep like the dead, and no one has to tell you to. The cook wakes you at 5:30 on Sunday morning with a boot toe against your bunk frame and a job. Coffee is going forward. The old man and the first mate have been in the wheelhouse most of the night, and the wheelhouse has a stove but no pot. And on this boat, the pot travels by deckhand. He hands you the big covered can with the wire bail, and a cloth sack with bread and cold beef in it. And he tells you to keep the can inside your coat and your feet under you. And he says it the same way every time. And you have learned that everything the cook says twice is a rule. You step out of the galley door onto the open deck, and the ship is the only thing in the world. She is running up Lake Erie in the last of the dark with a following wind, and the sky is starting to gray up behind her, and there is nothing on any side of her but water. You stand a second by the door the way you always do. Aft of you is the whole stern castle, the galley and the mess and the crew cabins stacked over the engine, lit yellow at 3 portholes, breathing coal smoke out of her one tall stack. Forward of you is 500 feet of boat. People ashore here 500 feet and nod along. They are thinking of something the length of a street. What they never figure is that between the stern of this ship and the bow of her, there is nothing at all. The 2 ends of her are 2 separate towns. Everything aft is heat and food and machinery and sleep. Everything forward is the wheel and the charts and the old man's cabin. And strung between the 2 towns there is a low, flat prairie of steel deck, open to the sky, with the hatches lying in a row down the middle of it like the backs of buried men. You count them as you go. Everybody counts them. There is nothing else out there to do with your eyes. The hatches sit maybe a stride apart, long steel lids battened down over the coal. each one dogged along its edges with clamps. A man sets by hand. You walk the port side, inside the rail, with the coffee can riding warm against your ribs, and the numbers go by underfoot. 4, 7, 10. The deck is never still. It works. That is the word the old hands use. And it took you half a season to feel what the word means. A loaded lake boat in any kind of sea does not ride like a wagon on a road. She rides like a long green branch, giving a little at the middle, easing over each swell. And if you stand amidships at hatch 16 and sight forward along the row of hatches, some moments, the far ones, are not quite where they were. Nobody talks about it. It is what steel does. And a boat that would not bend is a boat that would break. And you learned that from Sully, the way you have learned most true things aboard. In one sentence, with no decoration on it, halfway forward, there is a skylight over the engine room, propped open an inch, even in November. And going by it, you get one breath of the underworld. Heat comes up out of that slot like a hand on your face. Light, too. Gold and shaking. You can look down through the gap and see a piece of the engine going, the crosshead rising and falling in its guides. Oiled steel, the size of a fence post, moving quick and easy as a sewing machine. And below it somewhere, Reggie and the other firemen stripped to their undershirts in front of the fire doors, feeding her. 14 tons of coal a day she eats when she is traveling. You carry one word of it forward with you. Varam, the last 100 feet, the wind finds you. It has been at your back the whole walk, pushing, friendly, the way a big dog is friendly. And at the forward end of the open deck, it curls around the cabins and comes at you sideways. And you lean into it without thinking. Up the ladder, past the old man's dark windows, up again. And you come into the wheelhouse at the top of the boat with the coffee can out of your coat. And it is quiet up there, in the way a church is quiet. Sully has the wheel. He stands to it loose and easy with his feet apart, a spoke resting in each hand, his eyes moving along the water in a slow circuit that never quits. The first mate takes the coffee off you without a word and pours for the old man first. The compass sits in front of the wheel in its brass bowl, lit from below by a small lamp, the cod floating steady on its point. And you have been aboard 2 months, and it still gets you. That little dish of fire, holding still, while the whole dark world swings around it. You should go aft. You do not go aft. Sully leaves a silence open the size of a boy. And you step into it. And he starts telling you the water. Low, without turning his head. That loom of light off the starboard quarter is Cleveland. 40 miles of night rolled up behind it. That single point, low to the water ahead, is the light at the mouth of the Detroit River, where the boat leaves the open lake and threads into the country for a day. He can tell a steamer's line by where her lights ride, and he tells you, and you cannot see the difference yet. And someday you will. Overhead, on the roof of the wheelhouse, the watchman strikes the bell. 2 strokes, a pair, then a small silence, then 2 more, 4 bells, 6 o'clock in the morning. And because Sully is Sully, you get the whole clock of the boat in a dozen sentences, while the sound is still going out over the water. The bell is struck every half hour. 1 stroke added each time. And at 8 bells, the watch is done, and the next men come up, and the count starts over. Around and around. 4 hours on and 4 off, all season long. No man aboard looks at a clock to know his life. He hears it. You will learn to sleep to that bell. Sully says, you will learn to wake at 7 bells with your boots half on before you know you are a man at all. It gets down in you. 30 years now. And ashore in the winters, he wakes in the dark, in his sister's house in Port Huron at every half hour, listening for it. And it is never there. He says all that to the windshield glass, watching the water. Then he clears his throat once, like a man shutting a drawer, and says, that is enough school. Go get your breakfast. If these long nights on the water are helping you sleep, a like or a subscribe keeps me making them. And I would like to know what part of the country you are listening from, and whether you have ever seen the lakes. Turn your lamp down now, and stay aboard a while. The bell will count the night for both of us. You go back down the ladders and out onto the long deck, and the walk aft ought to be downhill all the way. Wind behind you. Gray morning, coming up fine, except that the wind is not behind you. You get maybe 10 hatches along before you notice what your face has already noticed. The wind that pushed you forward an hour ago is lying on your left cheek now, coming across the beam of her out of another quarter of the sky entirely. And there is a new edge in it. And you stop by hatch 11 a second and stand there like a fool with an empty coffee can, feeling the weather turn around you like something changing its mind. By the middle of Sunday morning, the ship is in the rivers, and the world has banks again. This is the strangest part of a lake boat's life, and you have not gotten tired of it yet. For a night, she is an ocean creature, with the horizon empty on every side. And then the land closes in, and she becomes something walking down a main street, the Detroit River first, and then the flat miles of Lake Street, Clare, and then the state. Clare River, winding north between Michigan on the one hand and Canada on the other, close enough to both that you can smell wood smoke and hear a church bell going on the American side. And men on the docks look up as 500 feet of loaded steel slides past their town, going the pace of a man on a good horse. The morning is clean. That is the thing nobody aboard says out loud. There was weather in the night. Real weather. The tail of it still kicking when you carried the coffee forward. And now the sky has scrubbed itself, and the sun is out honest and bright. And it is cold. A still, hard, glittering cold. And the smoke from the towns goes straight up. Along the river, the trees are bare and black, and hardly a branch of them is moving. After a blow, that kind of morning feels like a paid debt. Even the gulls sit fat and easy on the pilings. The barometer in the wheelhouse has been falling since Saturday night. You know that only because you were sent up again with the pot near the end of the morning? And the first mate was tapping the glass with the back of one knuckle. The little brass and glass instrument screwed to the bulkhead by the chart table, and he tapped it the way a man taps a gauge he does not believe, and read it, and wrote a figure in the log, and looked out at that hard blue sky, and said nothing at all. The glass tells one story. The sky is telling another, and a barometer has no imagination. which is the whole reason ships carry them. At the government dock, going up the river, there are flags on the pole. You see them plain from the deck. Everybody does. Two of them, square, white above and black below, standing out stiff now in a breeze that has come up since morning. And below them, a red pennant snapping. You ask the watchman beside you at the rail what the hoist reads, and he looks at it the way a farmer looks at a sky he has already planted under. Storm warning, he says. Northwest. And the boat keeps going. And that wants explaining. Because 60 years on, people will sit in warm rooms and shake their heads at it. And the men on this river deserve better than that. Those flags have been flying somewhere on these lakes most of the fall. That is the first thing. November on fresh water is one long storm warning with short gaps in it. And a master who tied up for every hoist of the white and black would still be sitting at the dock in Duluth with his season's contracts torn up. And the man who owns the boat would go find a master who was not so careful. The second thing is that the warning is a telegraph message turned into cloth. It says, wind is coming. It does not say how much wind or for how long. And it cannot say what nobody on earth knows yet, that there are 2 storms out there with an appointment to keep. The Weather Bureau cannot see that far in 1913. The gap between what those flags can say and what is actually coming down off the top of the continent tonight is where this whole story lives. And the third thing is the plainest. She is a big new steel ship with a full cargo and a good engine. And she rode out yesterday's blow like a duck on a pond, while smaller boats ran for shelter. Every man aboard has stood at this rail and watched those flags go by in other Novembers, on other rivers. There is not one fool on this boat. There are 25 people doing the arithmetic the lakes have always demanded, and the arithmetic has always come out. Up near the head of the river, where the water widens toward the open lake, you come up on another steamer. She is a big one, upbound like you, loaded deep the way you are. Black hull and white cabins, close enough in the narrow water that her wake and yours run together and slap between the two of you. Her afterdeck slides by so near, you can see the cook's screen door hooked open and dish towels on a line, and a man standing at her rail with a pipe, taking the sun. Your whistle goes. 1 long, 2 short, a passing salute. Boat to boat, the oldest good manners on the lakes. A second later hers answers. 1 long and 2 short. The sound bouncing off the Canadian bank and coming back doubled. And up and down both decks, men lift a hand without breaking stride. The way you wave from one farm wagon to another. Sully is off watch, standing at the rail beside you with his coat collar up, and he squints across the water at the man with the pipe. And something in him settles and points like a dog. He knows that man. Steered with him on the old Presque Isle years back. The man owes him $1.25 from a card game in Sarnia in 1911. And Sully has been letting it ride at no interest. And he says the man knows where to find him. And the man has known where to find him for 2 years. And there is a whole friendship folded up inside the way Sully says it. He lifts his cap off. The man with the pipe lifts his. The ship draws past, and her name goes by on her stern in white letters. And the name is Charles S. Price. And nobody aboard either boat gives it one more thought than you give the name on a neighbor's mailbox. By early afternoon, the banks fall away on both sides, and the water opens, and the color of it goes from river green to a deep lake iron, and Lake Huron takes the ship the way the open always takes her, with a long, slow lift under the bow, like something very large turning over in its sleep. The wind is dead ahead now, out of the north, and it has quit feeling like a breeze that came up and started feeling like a thing that arrived. It has grit in it, a fine dry cold off the top of Canada, and the first spray comes over the weather rail and rattles on the hatch tops like thrown gravel, and it does not melt where it lands. You look back once, the way you always do, at the land. The river mouth is already closing up behind her. The twin lighthouses, small and white, the water tower at the edge of town catching the sun, and the shoreline stretching off low and blue on either side, thinning as she pulls away. You stand at the after rail and watch Michigan go down into the water an inch at a time, until there is a last dark thread of it lying on the horizon. And then the ship rises on a swell and settles. And when she settles, the thread is gone. From here on, there are no flags, no telegraph, no church bells. Everything the sky intends to say, it will have to say to the ship directly. Early in the afternoon, you are sent forward again, and this trip is the one you will go back over in your head for the rest of your life, looking for the moment the day changed, and never quite finding it, because the day did not change all at once. It leaned. The wheelhouse is crowded for a Sunday. The old man is at the forward windows with his hands folded behind him. The first mate is at the chart table. Sully has come up early for his watch, which he does when he does not like the water, and nobody has ever had to ask him why he is early. You set the coffee down and you should leave, and you find something to do with the cups instead. Slow, and nobody runs you out. The mate taps the barometer glass. He has been tapping it all day, every hour. And this time, you happen to be standing where you can see the needle when his knuckle touches the case. The needle jumps, not far, a small, tired drop, the way a man's shoulder gives when he sets down a load. The mate looks at it a while. Then he writes in the log, and from where you stand, you can see the column of figures going down the page, each one written at the top of the hour in his square, careful hand, each one smaller than the one above it. Outside the windows, the sky is bright. That is the part that does not sit right, even to you. Even at 18, with 2 months of water behind you, there is high, thin cloud coming across from the northwest now, a white smear like a thumb dragged over wet paint. But the sun is standing through it plain, and the lake is blue iron with a running chop. Nothing any boat would call weather. The glass says the sky is lying. The mate taps it once more, as if it might take the figure back, and it does not take it back. Sully watches you looking at it. Come here, he says. He is by the side windows, working his left hand against his leg, open and shut, and he nods out at the water and gives you the whole science of the thing, the way he gives everything, in the flat voice of a man reading off a heading, and it takes him about 2 minutes, and no professor with a chalkboard has ever done it better. There are 2 storms, he says. There was the one that blew through yesterday, that everybody watched go. And everybody stood in the sun this morning and called it done. And there is another one coming up from the south of us. And what the glass is saying is that the two of them have got an appointment somewhere over this lake. And when two storms marry, the wedding is bigger than both of them. He turns his hand over, palm up, and lays the other hand across it crosswise. Then he says the part about the water. And this is the part that matters. So he says it slower. Wind out of the north on Lake Huron is a different animal from wind anywhere else. He says, look at the chart. The lake lies north and south, 200 and some miles of open water laid out in a line, and a north wind runs down the whole length of it with nothing to break its stride. And every mile it runs, the seas underneath it grow. Saltwater men laugh at the lakes because the numbers are small. What they have never stood in is a lake sea, short and steep and coming fast, one behind another, with no rest between them. So the boat gets no time to climb the next one before it is on her, and the water is fresh. He says, fresh water freezes at a warmer mark than salt. What comes over the rail tonight is going to stay aboard. That is the whole lecture. He looks back out the window and works his hand. There is one thing more, and nobody in that wheelhouse can know it. So it has to be said from here, once, across the years. Before this night is over, this one lake is going to take 8 ships and every soul on them. The needle in the brass case is the only thing aboard that can feel that coming, and it is doing everything a needle can do. The old man has not said a word through any of it. He stands at the forward glass with his hands behind his back, and the ship runs north, and the light on the water starts going pale and strange as the white smear thickens across the sun. And later in the afternoon, the first rain comes, thin, slantwise, rattling on the windows like sand. You watch it hit the glass and slide, and then between one gust and the next, the sound of it changes, softens, goes from rattle to hush, and the drops on the glass quit sliding and start sticking, and it is not rain anymore. Just like that, between 2 breaths, with nobody saying anything, the flakes come past the window's level, going south. Fat and gray in the failing light, the old man watches it a moment. Then he crosses to the chart room door at the back of the wheelhouse, and goes in, and pulls it to behind him, and the latch clicks in the quiet like a small cold thing. Sully takes the wheel from the man on it. Early, go aft now, he says to you, and get your supper while it is hot. The walk aft is the last easy thing. You go down the ladders with the empty can and out onto the open deck, and the snow is coming across her beam in long ropes, and the wind lays a shoulder on you the whole 500 feet. Steady, insistent, like a big man moving you through a doorway. The hatches go by underfoot. The skylight over the engine room has been dropped shut and dogged. By the time you pull the galley door open, the back of your coat is white, and the heat of the galley hits your face like a slap. And the cook looks at the snow on you and says nothing about it. And that is its own kind of remark. Supper is thick soup and bread, and the mess room is loud with the off-watch. And for half an hour, the world is a warm, yellow room full of men eating. Then the room starts to move. It comes on so gradually that nobody can say afterward when it started. The ship has been riding a head sea since the river mouth. A long, steady pitch, bow up and bow down, that a lake sailor quits feeling the way a man quits hearing his own clock. This is different. This is roll, side to side, the floor leaning under the benches, and the first few go by, and the coffee climbs one wall of the cups and settles back, and the talk keeps going right over it. Then a roll comes that is deeper than the ones before it, and holds a beat longer, and the soup pot walks 2 inches across the range top with a sound like a growl, and the talk stops, while every man in the room does the same arithmetic with the seat of his trousers. The cook sets the fiddle rails. They are strips of wood that stand up in slots along the table edge, dividing the tabletop into small corrals, one for a plate, one for a cup, and they have been stowed under the bench since the last hard weather in October. He sets them the way a farmer shuts a gate, and he wedges the soup pot into the corner of the range with an iron bar made for it, and he settles the coffee pot deeper into its ring, and he goes around the galley doing up latches. You did not know the galley had. Nobody stops eating, but the room has changed, and every man in it helps the change along in small ways, without discussion. Chairs that are loose get hooked to their eye bolts. A man finishing his coffee holds the cup in his hand between swallows instead of setting it down. The watch coming off shift eats with one boot braced against the bench leg. Easy. Automatic. And you watch them do it, and you brace yours the same. And that is how everything gets learned on a boat. The rolls find their rhythm. And the rhythm is the thing you will remember. There is a period to it. A count. The ship goes over to starboard. Hunks. Comes back through level. Goes over to port. Hunks. Comes back. And you can count it in your head. And your body learns the count inside of 10 minutes and starts riding it without being told. Leaning before the lean comes. The way you ride a wagon on a bad road. As long as the count holds, the weather is just weather. Men have eaten 10,000 suppers on this lake to that count. By the end of supper, the count is shorter, not by much, by a little. The hang at the end of each roll is quicker, the return sharper. And twice she takes a sea somewhere forward that thuds through the frames like a fist on a door 2 rooms away. And the water in the glass rack shivers. And the cook stands at his range with a ladle in his hand and his eyes somewhere else, listening the way you listen to a child's cough from the next room. You go to your cabin to sleep before your watch, because sleep is a thing you bank aboard. And this is the last of the ordinary bunks of your life, though nobody has told you so. The cabin is dark and cold after the galley. Your bunkmate is on watch. You get your boots off and stand them against the wall where your feet can find them. And you take the tin cup off its hook, your own cup, dented along the lip, that your father drank out of on a harvest crew in Dakota before you were born. And you do what you have done every rough night of your 2 months aboard. You wedge it into the corner of the bunk frame down by your feet, between the mattress and the steel, where it cannot get loose and go traveling. Then you climb in under the blanket with your clothes on, and the ship rolls you against the wall, and holds you there a while, and rolls you back. You lie in the dark and feel her working. The engine turns underneath you, far down, steady as ever, and the seas come against the bow in their rhythm, and the wind has found a voice somewhere up in the rigging wires. a low singing note that rises and falls. And none of it is new, and all of it is a size bigger than it was at supper. Down the passageway, a door that has never banged is banging, and somebody goes and wedges it, and the boots go back the way they came. Unhurried, you sleep in pieces, the way you have learned to, sometime in the first dark hours of the evening. The watch changes. You hear the men come down half awake, hear the murmur, hear boots and oilskins, and there is a voice in the passageway outside your door. The watchman coming off, talking low to somebody, and you catch one piece of it through the door and carry it down with you into sleep without knowing what you are carrying. He says there is not a light showing anywhere ahead of her, not a masthead, not a town, not one light on the whole north half of the world, and it is not because nothing is out there. The lake ahead is full of ships, upbound and downbound, every one of them burning her lamps. It is because the snow has pulled a curtain across the evening, and from here on, whatever is out there, nobody is going to see it coming. Your watch starts at 8 in the evening, and supper sits you down at 7 with an hour to kill, and you cannot sit still through it. So when the cook jerks his chin at the night pail, you take the errand. He keeps a pail for the black gang, coffee and bread and whatever the supper left behind. And most nights, one of the firemen comes up for it himself. Tonight the cook looks at you fidgeting on the mess bench with your boots already on, and he hands you the pail, and you go down. Down is its own country. You go through a door off the passageway that most of the deck crew never opens, onto a steel grating at the top of the engine room, and the heat comes up around you like water closing over your head. It is a shaft of a room, 3 decks deep, lit yellow, and the engine stands in the middle of it, the full height of the shaft, and every part of her is moving. The cranks come around at the bottom in their pit with a sound like a giant walking in boots. The crossheads ride up and down their guides. The connecting rods swing their tonnage through the air, smooth as a man swinging his arms. And the whole assembly turns and turns without one wasted motion. And standing over it on the grating, you can feel the beat of her come up through your boot soles and set up shop in your chest. Topside, the storm is a wall you lean on. Down here, it is a rumor. You go down the ladders, 1 deck at a time, and the heat thickens as you go. And at the bottom, you come forward through a short alley into the boiler room. And this is the hot heart of the whole floating town. And it is a place out of a church picture, the old kind, the kind with fire in it. The boilers stand in a row, riveted iron drums, big as corn cribs. And in the face of each one, the fire doors show a seam of orange around their edges, like something alive holding its breath. The coal comes down from the bunkers through chutes at the side. The floor plates are steel, swept clean, and they are hot through your boots. And the air is so thick with heat and coal dust and the smell of hot oil that the first breath of it stands you still. Reggie is on the middle boiler. He has his shirt off and his undershirt soaked through and a sweat rag around his neck. And you stand out of the way and watch him work, because it is worth watching. He swings the fire door open with the hook, and the light that comes out of that door is a color you have no name for, white gone past white. And the roar of the draft leaps up a note. He does not look into it straight. He looks alongside it, reading the fire off the corners of his eyes. And then the scoop goes in, and his back and shoulders send the coal off the blade in a flat fan, spreading it even across the grate. No peel, no bare spot. 6 scoops laid out like a man dealing cards. Then the door swings shut with a clang, and the roar drops back down. And the whole exchange has taken him maybe 20 seconds. 3 seconds with the door open. You have heard him say it. A fire door standing open pours cold air across the grates and knocks the steam back. And the steam is the whole point of everything down here. And so the door gets 3 seconds. And that rule is the closest thing to religion this room has. He sees the pail and grins at you with his teeth white in the black of his face. And he does not try to talk. There is no talking down here. The fires roar. The forced draft hums. The engine walks in its boots on the other side of the bulkhead. And the men who work this room have a language of chin and hand and eyebrow, and you already know some of it. He points you to set the pail in the tool locker, out of the coal dust, and he holds up one finger. Wait. And he steps to the gauge board. The steam gauge is the size of a dinner plate, brass, lit by its own small lamp. He taps it the way the mate taps the barometer, and the needle rides where the needle is supposed to ride. And he looks at it the way a man looks at his own child sleeping. And that look is the whole sermon. Up in the wheelhouse, they steer her. Down here, they keep her alive. As long as there is steam, the engine turns. As long as the engine turns, the bow can be held up into the seas. And if the steam ever fails in weather like what is gathering topside, the ship swings sideways into the trough, and the lake does what it likes with her. No man in this room says any of that tonight. It lives in the 3-second rule, and in the tap of a knuckle on brass, and in the way the second fireman is already breaking his next scoop of coal off the pile before the last one is burned. You stand a while in the heat, and something in you unclenches for the first time since the snow started. It is a strange place to find comfort. The bottom of a steel ship in a rising storm. Below the waterline. Below the fish. In a room with fire in it. But the comfort is real, and every sailor knows it. The rhythm down here pays no attention to the sky. Scrape, swing, fan, clang. The needle steady on the plate. The cranks coming around. It is the heartbeat of the whole dark town above you. The galley stove, and the compass lamp, and 25 working souls. All of it hanging off that beat. And the beat does not miss. Then the lake reaches in and touches the room. The ship rolls down to starboard, one of the long ones, and through 14 feet of coal and a half-inch of riveted steel, you hear a sea hit her side. It is a sound you have never heard from inside. A deep, blunt boom, like a blasting charge in a quarry 2 farms over, felt as much as heard. And the floor plates shiver under your boots. And off the beams overhead, a fine black dust of coal comes sifting down through the lamplight. Slow, drifting aft as she rolls. The whole room's held breath made visible. Reggie looks up at the beams, then at you. He does not grin this time. He tips his head toward the ladder. And the meaning is as plain as a shout. Go up where the air is. Boy, your watch is coming. You go up the ladders through the falling heat. Deck B deck. And the storm grows back around you as you climb. And, by the top grating, the engine's boots are half drowned out by the wind. And you step through the door into the cold passageway and stand a second with your hand flat on the dogged door, feeling her beat fade under your palm. You go on watch at 8 in the evening, and the wind has changed its voice. You hear it before you are out of the passageway, and you stand at the door sorting it the way Sully taught you to sort sounds. And the difference is this: all afternoon the wind rose and eased, drawing breath between gusts, the way wind has drawn breath since the beginning of the world. This wind is not breathing. It is one single sustained shove, a note held down like a thumb on an organ key, and it has been climbing all through supper, and it does not let up between its risings, because there are no risings. There is only more. The open deck at 8 that night is a place you will visit in dreams for 60 years. The snow does not fall. Falling is the wrong word for what snow does in wind like this. It travels level out of the north, in ropes and sheets that show up gray in the deck lights and are gone, and it packs into the weather side of every stanchion and cleat, and it hits the side of your hood with a steady hiss like sand poured from a height. The lifelines have been rigged, wire ropes strung waist-high down the length of the deck, and you go forward, hand over hand along one with the ship rolling under you. And twice green water comes over the weather rail somewhere ahead and goes sluicing aft past your boots, ankle deep, and finds the freeing ports, and is gone. You come up into the wheelhouse, half frozen, and it is dark, except for the compass lamp and the small light over the chart. And Sully is on the wheel. And one look at his back tells you more than the barometer told the mate. He is working. 30 years, you could watch this man steer and never see him move above the wrist. Tonight his whole body is in it. The wheel kicks against him, and he checks it, eases it back, meets the next kick, and he is standing with his feet wide and his knees soft, like a man riding a hay wagon down a rutted hill, and the spokes go back and forth through his hands in short, hard bursts. The mate puts you at the engine room telegraph to stand by it. And that is how you come to spend the hardest watch of your life so far, in the best seat aboard, 3 feet from Sully's elbow, watching a master do the one thing he was put on earth to do. He talks to you. That is the wonder of it. Low, in pieces, between seas, without ever taking his eyes off the dark forward glass. And you will figure out years later that the talking was for your sake, to give a scared boy something to hold. And it worked. And you held it. Feel that, he says, as the bow rises, and you feel it. The wheel goes light in his hands for a second, light as a bicycle, and he makes a small sound in his throat. That is the rudder coming out of the water, or near enough. He says, she is climbing a sea, and her stern is riding high, and the rudder has quit biting. A wheel that fights you is a good wheel. A wheel that goes light is the lake telling you that for the next few seconds she belongs to it and not to you. The bow comes over the top and starts down, and the wheel loads up hard again. And he leans into it. Count the seas, he he says. You count. They are coming at her out of the north-northwest, maybe 8 seconds apart. 8 seconds from the bow lifting to the bow lifting again. Short and steep, the way he promised you at the chart table this afternoon. And there is spray going over the wheelhouse now, over the top of the whole forward castle, rattling on the roof over your heads like buckets of gravel flung by a strong man. Then he tells you about the sisters. The lakes run their seas in families. He says, you will hear old men say the third wave is the biggest, and you will hear other old men say it is the seventh, and the truth is, nobody has ever counted the lake honest in weather like this. But the truth inside the saying is real, and here it is. The seas are not all one size. They come in runs, and every so often the runs stack up, 2 or 3 seas piling into one another, until something comes down the lake that is a head taller than everything around it. And it is usually not alone. The old men call them the 3 sisters. The first one puts her head down. The second one buries her. And the third one arrives while she is still shaking off the second, when her bow is low, and her decks are full, and her rudder is soft. And that is the one that finds out what a ship is made of. You will know them when they come. He says, you will not need me to point. The watch grinds on. The cold comes up through the wheelhouse floor. The old man appears at some black hour without a word, and stands at the back of the house, a shape against the chart light. And his being there changes the room the way it always does. And he says nothing at all. And after a time, you understand that he is not going back to his cabin tonight. Late in the watch, the watchman forward moves to strike the bell. You see him through the forward glass, a hooded shape in the lee of the windlass. Reaching up, you see his arms swing. Once, twice, 3 times. 6 bells. 11 o'clock. The count of the boat going on, the way it has gone all season, around and around. The sound that has laid you down and woken you up for 2 months, and there is nothing. You watch his arms swing, and you hear the wind and the seas and the gravel rattle of the spray. And inside all of that, there is no bell at all. The wind has reached down and taken the sound out of the air between his hand and your ear, 30 feet, and eaten it whole. Beside you, without looking, Sully speaks over the wheel. She just struck 6 bells. He says, whether we heard it or not, and the words are barely out of him when the bow drops away under her. Long and sick and deeper than she has dropped all night, and the wheel spins light through his hand. And out of the dark, ahead comes the first sister. The first sister puts her head down, the way Sully said she would. The bow goes into it, rather than over it, and the sea comes aboard solid, and the whole forward end of the ship disappears under a gray hill of water that rolls aft along the deck, burying the hatches one after another, 1 to 5, 5 to 9, and the ship staggers under the weight of it, and you can feel her slow, actually slow, the way a man slows walking into a crowd. The second one buries her. There is no bow at all now. Out the forward glass there is only water, streaming over the windlass, standing off the anchor gear in torn white sheets, and the wheelhouse itself takes the top of the sea across its face. and the world outside the windows goes solid for the length of a long breath. The ship lies down half a foot deeper into the lake and shudders down her whole length like a dog shaking. And Sully has the wheel hard over, holding her nose up into it by main strength and prayer. And behind you in the dark, the old man says one word: steady. That is all he says. Steady, said quiet, said level, the way a man gentles a horse. And you never work out in all the years after whether he said it to Sully or to the ship. The third sister lifts her instead of burying her. That is the mercy of that particular hour. And it is luck. And every man in the wheelhouse knows it is luck. She has just enough head up when the big one arrives. And the bow climbs it. Up and up past believing. And the sea passes under her in a long rolling mountain and lets the bow fall off the back of it into the trough, with a boom that comes up through the deck and through your boots and through your teeth, and the tin fittings on the chart lamp buzz. And away aft in the dark, the coal grumbles and settles in her holds. Then the water runs off her, and she is still a ship, and the seas go back to being merely terrible. You look at the clock over the chart table, and your watch is not half done. What happens through the rest of that evening is the thing this part of the night is really about. And it happens slowly. And there is no single moment when it finishes happening. The world closes. The snow thickens until thick is no longer the word. It comes level out of the north in a single unbroken freight of white. And the spray comes with it, torn off the wave tops and frozen to grains in the air. And the two of them together fill the dark so full that the deck lights become smears. Then glows. Then rumors. You watch it happen from the wheelhouse over the course of your watch. At 6 bells, you can see the windlass forward. By 7, you can see hatch 1 and nothing past it. By 8 bells, you can see the deck directly below the windows and the near rail. And everything beyond that is a wall. The wall is what nobody can describe afterward, though every man who was on the lakes that night tries. It is white dark. Ashore, on the blackest night of the year, the sky and the ground are different darknesses, and a man can walk by the difference. And out here, even in storm, there has always been the pale of the wave tops, the loom of the sky, some seam in the world to steer your eye by. That seam is gone. Sky and water and snow have been stirred into one substance, and the substance presses against the wheelhouse glass, lit faintly gray by your own lights, and it swallows the bow of your own ship, 500 feet of her, and from her own wheelhouse. You cannot see her front end. The glass itself starts to go blind. Snow packs into the corners of the frames and grows inward. Spray freezes on the panes in layered sheets. And between seas, the watchman leans out the lee door and scrapes a port clear with the blade of his hand. And by the time he has his mitten back on, the clear place has skinned over again with new ice. Gray, pebble, like looking through a bottle bottom. One pane at the center is kept alive with hot water carried up from below in the coffee can, poured across the outside in a sizzling sheet that freezes as it runs off, buying a minute of sight at a time. And you are the one who carries the can, trip after trip. And that is your work now, hauling sight to the blind. And here is what there is to see. In the minute after each canful, gray, moving gray, without edge or scale or distance, A sea shape heaves up in it, somewhere ahead, or does not, and passes under her, or does not, and the eye strains into the whirl until it invents things. Lights, shorelines, the black bows of steamers dead ahead, and the mind learns after a while to distrust its own best sense. That lesson has a cost, and men aboard other ships on this same water are paying it tonight with everything they have. So the wheelhouse goes over to its other senses, and the ship is steered from inside the body. The compass first. The card swims in its bowl in the binnacle light, tilting with her rolls, and it says, north, and it goes on saying north, through everything, patio, indifferent. A small floating fact in a world with no other facts left in it. But the compass names the direction of the bow and nothing else. It cannot see the sea coming crosswise out of the whirl. For that, there is only feel and sound. Feel is the wheel in the hands and the deck in the feet. Here roll, her hang, the second of lightness that says, the rudder has gone soft, and sound is the seas themselves. You learn it standing there through the black hours. Learn it without knowing you are learning. A sea met head-on has a boom in it, deep and square, felt in the chest. A sea taken on the shoulder of the bow has a slap in it, sharper, and it drives her head off. And the wheel loads up hard on the one side. And a sea heard hissing before it is felt at all is a sea whose top the wind has torn off, coming aboard as water in the air. Tones of it, rattling on the roof. The men on watch stand in the dark, reading the lake through the soles of their boots and the drums of their ears. And the ship becomes their one shared body. That is plainly how it is done, because there is no other way left to do it. Somewhere near the end of your watch, the old man makes his decision. He has been at the chart table a long while with the mate. The two of them bent under the small light, and there is nothing on the chart they do not already carry in their heads. And that is not why men look at charts in an hour like this. Then he straightens, and he gives his course to Sully. Plain, a hair off the wind's eye, and Sully repeats it back and eases the wheel, and the ship's head comes around a point or two, and settles. You are young, and it takes you a minute to work out what has just happened. And when it arrives cold. The course he gave is nowhere. It is a bearing, and there is no harbor on it. No dock. No lay. Nothing on the far end of that line, but more of the same lake, the passage north, the ports, the schedule, the cargo contract, the whole errand this ship was built for, and loaded for, and paid for. All of it has been set aside without one word of announcement. And what remains is a single, simple intention. And every man aboard, from the wheelhouse to the fire, hold comes to it in the next hour. Each in his own way, without any speech being made. Keep her head to the seas. Keep steam on her. Stand up to it, blow by blow, and hold on until the lake changes its mind. The ship has quit going anywhere. She is enduring, in place, in the dark, inside a storm that has erased the world. And somewhere behind the whirl, the last of the daylight hours are long gone, and the night has the whole lake to itself. The seas grow all evening, and the growing does not announce itself. It accumulates. You come off watch, and get souped down. You standing braced in the galley, and you go back up, because the watches have quit meaning much. Every hand is wanted somewhere, and in the hour between one trip forward with the hot can and the next, the lake has changed size again. Nobody aboard puts a number to it while it is happening. The numbers come later, from the weathermen gathering up the wreckage of the record. And the number they settle on for the seas on Lake Huron that night is 35 feet. And some say 36. And here is what a number like that means to the body of a man standing in a wheelhouse, 18 years old. It means that when she goes down into the trough, you look up at water. Up, the sea ahead of her stands taller than the house you are standing in. And the house is 40 feet above her waterline. And the crest above you is torn white and smoking. And the face of the thing is black and ribbed and moving. And for the space of 2 heartbeats, it is the whole sky. A man ashore would say it looked like a 3-story building coming down the street at him. And that is the truth. And that is the last time any building will be mentioned. Because comparisons are shore talk. And you are not ashore. The bow goes into the bottom of the trough and stops. That is the sensation. Stopping, as if she has run onto something solid. And the sea ahead breaks over her whole forward end. And the ship takes tons of lake aboard in one swallow. You feel the weight of it in your knee. She staggers, buried to the hatches, water standing rail to rail down her length like a flooded road. And then she gathers herself under all that load and starts to climb, and the water goes pouring aft and off her sides in sheets. And she comes up streaming like something surfacing, and the next one is already standing over her. That is one sea. They are 8 seconds apart. Do that arithmetic once, and then leave it alone, because the men aboard have to live inside it. The stern is its own country of trouble, and you learn about it the hard way. Going aft, you make the run along the lifeline late in the evening with 2 other men, sent to help the cook secure his stores, and amidships, out on the open deck, with the wire rope burning cold through your mittens. You are there when her bow drives deep and her stern comes up and the propeller comes out of the water. You hear it before you understand it. The engine, which has held one steady beat under your life since Ohio, suddenly runs away from itself. A rising, frantic hammer, the whole afterdeck buzzing under it, because the wheel that has had the whole lake to push against is spinning in air. And somewhere down in that hot yellow room, the engineer is at his throttle, checking her, catching her, the way a driver hauls in a spooked team. Then the stern falls. It drops out from under your feet, the full depth of the trough, and lands. And the propeller bites solid water again. And the shock of all of it together comes up through the deck plates, like the ship has been picked up by the back of the neck and shaken. The man ahead of you on the lifeline turns his head and yells something, and his voice goes straight up into the wind and is gone. And you never learn what he said. You just grip and go on. In the galley, the cook has the world lashed down and a pot of coffee riding in its iron ring. And how there is still coffee is a question for the church. And he fills you a cup half full, half on purpose. And you drink it with your back against the range rail while the room tilts around you. And it is the best thing you have ever had in your mouth. He watches the water sluice past his one aft porthole. Green, solid, going by like river water past a bridge pier. She is taking them aboard faster than she can drain them, he says. He says it the way he says the beans are done. And it is a plain fact, and you can see it out the glass. The freeing ports along her rail, the openings that let boarding seas run off her, cannot keep pace anymore. Each sea leaves a little more of itself aboard than the one before, swirling deep around the hatches, and her roll has picked up a new slowness at the bottom of it, a hesitation, like a man walking with his boots full. Going forward again is worse, into the wind's face this time. And by now the wind has passed anything you have words for. 80 miles an hour is the number the record keepers will settle on, gusting past it, and held there hour upon hour. And this is what it does. It flattens the skin of your face against the bone. It drives snow through the weave of your coat, through wool, through the shirt under the wool, so that you arrive forward with a rime of white next to your own skin. It takes your breath out of your mouth before you can use it, so that you learn to turn your head sideways and sip air out of your own hood like a man drinking from a jar. And it leans on the ship herself, on her cabins and her spar, and her one tall stack, a steady, solid shoulder of moving air, so that she carries a small, permanent list away from it. Degrees of lean that never come all the way back between seas. You come up the ladder into the wheelhouse and there are 4 men in it, and nobody is talking. Sully is on the wheel, still. Hours past the end of any watch of his, because this is his water and his weather, and no one has suggested relieving him twice. The old man stands his ground at the glass. The seas come out of the whirl, one after another, and the ship meets them, and shakes, and rise, and meets the next. And there is no conversation in the room, because there is nothing in the room to say. The ship is saying all of it. She booms forward, and groans along her length, and buzzes aft when the wheel races. And the men stand inside her voice and listen the way you listen to a strong man breathing under a load, waiting for the breath to catch. And somewhere toward midnight, it catches. A sea comes aboard forward, one of the big ones. Nothing new about it. And she puts her head down and takes it the way she has taken 100. But the sound this time is different, and every man in the wheelhouse hears the difference at the same instant. Under the boom of the water, there is a second sound, deeper and shorter. A single hard knock from somewhere down her spine, amidships or aft of amidships, felt in the floor more than heard. The sound of steel meeting something inside its own body. The sea runs off her. She rises and goes on. The next one comes and she takes it clean. And the one after. Nobody says a word about the knock, but Sully takes one hand off the wheel, the left one, the numb one, and lays it flat against the wooden bulkhead beside him, palm down, fingers spread, the way a man lays a hand on the flank of a horse in the dark. And he leaves it there a long time, feeling for something down inside her, with his eyes never once leaving the forward glass. Around midnight, the temperature goes down like a stone in a well. It has been cold all along. Cold has been the floor of the world since the river mouth, and every man aboard has been living on that floor for 2 days. And then, in the black hours after midnight, the the floor gives way, and there is a deeper cold under it. The mate reads the thermometer outside the wheelhouse door by matchlight and does not trouble to announce the figure. It has gone down into the teens. And the wind is still making 80. And there is water in the air, spray and snow and the torn tops of seas. And now, everything the lake throws at the ship quits running off her. It stays, it lands, and it grips. And it freezes where it grips. And the ship starts to change shape in the dark. You see it happen by lantern light and deck light in the stretches between seas. And the seeing comes in pieces. The way you would notice a man aging if a year passed every hour. The lifelines are the first thing. The wire ropes strung down the deck have been wire ropes all your 2 months aboard. An inch around, out, singing in the wind. Now there is a gray sleeve growing on them. Every dollop of spray adds a skin, and the skin hardens, and the next spray adds another. And by the middle of the night, the lifelines are ice ropes thick as your arm, lumpy, dead to the touch, and the hand that grips them cannot close all the way around anymore. And the wind gets no song out of them at all. The rails grow, the cleats grow, and lose their shape, and become white knuckles. The ladders grow the worst kind of growth, a clear glaze on every rung, hard as bottle glass and slicker. And a man coming down them now comes down facing them, both hands choked on the rails, boots feeling for each rung through the ice. Nobody has to order this. The first man who trusts a rung teaches the rest with one short ride on his back. And he is lucky. And he knows he is lucky. And after that, the whole crew comes down ladders like old men. And that is the correct way. And pride has nothing further to say about it. Doors turn against the men who use them. The weather doors have gaskets and dogs. And the dogs freeze. And the men carry a mallet now on every trip to break them loose. And the knock of the mallet going around a door frame becomes one of the ordinary sounds of the ship, the way the bell used to be. The door itself gains weight you can feel in your shoulder, sheeted over, hinges stiff with frost, and it swings slow and lands heavy, and a man times his going out between seas. Because a door that catches a boarding sea half open can take a hand off at the wrist, and the ship grows heavy in a way that has nothing to do with cargo. Nobody aboard can weigh it. But the ice is going on her by the ton, hour after hour, plating the forward face of the cabins, sheathing the rigging wires, until they stand thick and white as porch posts, loading the rails and the winches and the hatch tops and every ledge and lip and fitting on 500 feet of steel. And all of it is going on high, above her deck, up where weight does a ship no good at all. You feel it before anybody says it. Her role has changed. The snap has gone out of her recovery. She goes over with a sea and she comes back. But she comes back the way a tired man gets up out of a chair, slower at the top. And every man who has sailed a fall season on the lakes knows what that slowness is, and knows there is not one thing to be done about it tonight. In daylight, in a lay, they would turn the crew out with mallets and bars to beat her clear. On this deck, in this wind, sending men out to chip ice would be trading lives for pounds. So the ice grows, and the men watch it grow, and carry their mallets, and say nothing much. Sometime in those hours, the whistle freezes, You are in the wheelhouse when it is discovered. The mate reaches for the pull to sound her position into the whirl. The long, mournful blast every ship carries for thick weather. The sound that says, "Here I am," to whatever is out there. And the pull comes back against his hand, with no voice on the other end of it. The line to the whistle is cased in ice, or the whistle itself is choked with it, packed solid up there on the stack in the streaming dark. And either way she is mute. He works the pull twice more, and gets nothing, and hangs it back on its hook. The ship has lost her voice. Whatever is out there in the whiteout with her, whatever loaded steamer is fighting down this same stretch of lake blind, she cannot so much as call out to it. The old man takes that news the way he takes everything, motionless at the glass. And after a while, he says to no one in particular that anything close enough to hear a whistle in this wind is too close for the whistle to matter, which is true and is meant as comfort, and works on nobody. Late in that stretch, you go down the inside ladders on an errand aft, and you come to the weather door on the lee side of the deckhouse, the sheltered side, the good door, and you throw the dogs and put your shoulder into it the way you have done 50 times since the storm began. It opens 3 inches and stops. Not the stop of a dogged latch or a warped frame, a solid stop, dead, like pushing on the side of a barn. Through the 3-inch gap, the wind screams at the crack, and fine snow shoots through and stings your eyes. And you get one look at the outer face of the door before you haul it shut. And the look tells you everything. The doorway is cased. Ice has grown down from the lintel and up from the sill and in from the frame on both sides. Inches of it, gray and rippled like candle wax. And the door is not a door anymore. It is a panel frozen into a wall that the storm is building around the whole ship. One skin of gray at a time. You dog it down and stand a second in the passageway with your heart going. Then you take the inside route aft, the long way, through the working alleys, the route the crew uses now for everything. Moles in their own boat. And behind you, the sealed door sits in the dark with the snow hissing at its crack. And you do not report it to anybody, because by now, every weather door on the lee side is the same, and everybody knows it, and nobody says it. The deepest part of that night has no clock in it. You have been awake so long, that time has come apart into pieces with no order to them. Soup standing up in the galley. The hot can hauled forward. A half-hour flat on your bunk, with your boots on, that may have been sleep, and may have been something shallower. And somewhere in the smallest hours, the men aboard quit speaking of watches at all. There is only the ship, and the men holding her, and the long wait for a gray that is still hours off. It is in that worn, thin stretch that you begin to hear her. Every boat talks. You learned that your first week aboard, steel works against steel, rivets creak, bulkheads tick, cargo settles, and the sum of it is a voice. And a man learns his own ship's voice the way he learns the footsteps of the people in his house, and quits hearing it, because it never says anything new. She is saying something new. It comes from amidships, low, under the boom of the seas and the scream of the wind, and you hear it first lying on your bunk with your ear against the frame, the way you have heard everything true on this boat. Agruan, long, drawn out, rising a little at the end. The sound of a barn beam in a windstorm. The sound a farmhouse makes once on the coldest night of January, and never makes again all winter, except that she makes it again and again. With the big ones, the seas that lift her bow and her stern at the same time and leave the loaded middle of her hanging between two hills of water. And there it comes, up through the frames, that long, deep complaint from the center of her body, from down where the steel is, from down where nobody can look. Steel is not supposed to have that word in it. That is the whole of what you know, and it is enough. You get up and go aft toward the galley, and on the way you pass the open door of the fireman's mess, and there are 3 men of the black gang in there off watch, sitting braced along the bench in their coats, awake. And as you pass, the ship hangs on 2 seas and groan, and you watch all 3 of them stop being tired at the same instant. Nobody looks at anybody. One of them, an older man, tips his head a half-inch to the side, listening, exactly the way the cook listened to the pot walking on the range, and the groan dies away aft, and the 3 of them go back to being tired, and you go on down the passageway with something new and cold folded up under your ribs. In the galley, the cook has entered his own final state, and it is a thing to see. The range cannot hold pots anymore, not with the rolling she is doing now, and so he has dug out a wash tub and half filled it with sand from the fire buckets, and screwed the tub down against the range rail, and the coffee pot rides in that sand up to its shoulders, warm, steady, unspillable, like a crock in a cellar. He has bread cut and laid up in a lidded tin. He has the lamps, down to 2, filled, and every other lamp in his kingdom put out cold and stowed in a locker. And when one of the deck watch comes through and sets a lit lantern on the mess table to free his hands, the cook takes it up without one word and blows it out and hands it back, and the look on his face closes the discussion for all time. An open flame on a ship being thrown around is a house fire waiting on one bad roll. His galley, his law, he feeds every man who comes through. That is the other half of the law. They come singly now, off the deck and up from the fire hold, crusted white or shining black, hands too stiff to work a spoon, and he stands them against the range rail in the warm and puts coffee into them, half a cup at a time, so it rides the roll, and bread they can hold in a fist, and he says almost nothing to any of them, and every man leaves that galley more of a man than he came in. You are standing braced in his warmth with your hands around a half cup when the water finds you. It comes in under the aft weather door, the one facing the following seas, a sheet of it, an inch deep, riding a roll, and it crosses the galley floor and breaks against the range base and runs back the way it came as she rolls the other way. The cook watches it go. Then he pulls a folded feed sack from behind the range and lays it along the door sill and steps on it to seat it and looks at it and gets a second sack and lays that over the first. It is the aft end you can feel changing, and it changes a little more every hour. The stern rides lower. There is no instrument aboard that says so. What says so is your own body going down the passageway, the slope of a floor you have walked for 2 months, reading differently underfoot. Downhill, now going aft, faintly, the way a field reeds downhill toward a creek before your eye can see the grade. Water has been finding her all night, through the strained doors, down the stack casing, through seams, sprung one hair at a time, working down through her to the places water goes. And the pumps have been running since the afternoon. And somewhere in the night, the pumps quit gaining. Nobody announces that either. You learn it the way the whole crew learns it. Standing in the galley, watching the cook's sand tub, feeling the pause at the bottom of her roll stretch out one more second, listening to her groan amidships when the two hills of water pick her up by both ends. And then, deep in those small hours, the engine room telegraph rings. You hear it from the galley. Faint, 2 decks down and a world away. That small bright bell that nobody rings in open water unless something has changed. And every head in the mess room comes up, and the answer gong sounds below as the engineer acknowledges. And then you feel the change come up through the soles of your boots. The beat that has driven her since Ohio, the walking of the giant down in the pit. The heart under everything slows, deliberately, evenly, down from her traveling stride to something gentler. A long, careful half-pace. The pace of a man carrying a full pail across ice. And you stand there in the galley with the half-cup going cold in your hand. And you take it in the way you have taken in everything on this ship, from the inside, with no announcement made. The old man is up there in the boarded dark, holding 500 feet of laden ship against the worst water of his lifetime. And he has just told the engine room to ease her. And there is only one reason on this earth. He would trade away, steerage way, in seas like these. He does not trust her middle anymore. He is trying to spare her the blows. He has quit asking the ship what she can do, and started asking her what she can bear. And every man aboard hears that little bell for exactly what it is. The sound of the question changing. The window goes first. You are in the wheelhouse when it happens, hauling the hot can, and there is no warning of any kind. And afterward, the men who were there will disagree about which sea did it, because the sea that did it looked like all the others. She puts her bow down, and the water comes over the forward castle solid, and one of the panes in the forward glass, a pane that has held all night, quits holding. It does not crack. It comes into the room whole, in pieces the size of stove lids, with the lake right behind it. The noise of the storm has been outside your whole life aboard. Now it is inside. Wind fills the wheelhouse the way water fills a jar. The chart flies off the table and flattens itself against the aft bulkhead and stays pinned there like a shot bird. Snow is in the room, whirling, and the compass lamp gutters and steadies and gutters. And the cold arrives, all at once and entire. And the man nearest the broken pane is down on one knee with a hand to his forehead and blood coming through his mitten from where the glass touched him going by. Sully has the wheel and never leaves it. Through all of it, through the burst and the wind and the shouting that gets torn to rags a foot from every mouth, he stands into the spokes with his eyes forward. And it is his voice that cuts through, flat as ever, saying, he needs eyes. Get me eyes? And the mate is already at his shoulder, calling the seas for him through the whirl. They fight canvas and boards across the empty frame. It takes 4 men the better part of an hour, working with hands that quit being hands. And when it is done, the wheelhouse is a dim, boarded room with one pane left alive. And the cold in it never leaves again. The old man sends you below. You are on the inside ladders. When the big roll finds her, you feel it start, the way all the deep ones start. The long lean going over to starboard. And your body waits for the place where she always slows and gathers herself. And this time, the place is not there. She keeps going. The ladder tilts under you until you are not climbing down it so much as lying against it. And through the steel wall, an inch from your face, you can hear loose gear going across cabins with a sound like a house falling downstairs. And still she leans. And somewhere in the middle of that lean, your ears fill with your own blood, and one thought stands up in you, very clear and quiet. So this is how it is. Then she stops. She hangs there. Whether it is 3 seconds or 10, no man aboard will ever be able to swear. And every man aboard is somewhere in her dark, braced against something, doing the same arithmetic with the seat of his soul. And she starts back up, slow, heavy, trembling down her whole length with the effort of it. Water pouring off her high side in a sheet you can hear through the plates. And she comes back through level and settles into her wallow. And from aft, faint through the decks, you can hear the coal grumbling in her holes, finding its new bed. And you hang on the ladder in the dark and breathe. Down in your cabin section, as you pass, you hear one small sound behind the door, and you know it without opening it. The tin cup has gotten loose. It has jumped its corner, out from between the mattress and the frame where you wedged it, and it is loose on the floor in there, traveling with her rolls, tapping the walls, looking for a way out. There is no time to go in after it. You go on aft, and the little knocking follows you down the passageway like something calling. And of everything that happens on this ship tonight, that is the sound that will come back to you at odd hours for 60 years. The stack goes while you are in the alleys amidships. You do not see it go. Nobody sees it go. In that whirl, and the men aft feel it more than hear it. A heavy wrenching from overhead, a shudder through the deckhouse frames, and then a boom somewhere off her lee side. That is nothing like water. What you know, where you are, deep in her, is the engine. The engine tells you her draft is built on that tall stack. The whole tremendous pull of air up through the fires depends on its standing, and in the space of a breath, the voice of the boat goes wrong below you, the fires losing their deep, steady roar, coughing at the fire doors. And the beat of the engine softens the way a voice softens when a hand comes over the mouth. In the fire hold, they are fighting for her now. You cannot see it, and you will hear it told for years. Reggie and the black gang in a room filling with backdrafted smoke, stripped and streaming, feeding her quick and thin and even, nursing every pound of steam she has left. And the engineer at his gauges, watching the needle he has watched all his working life come slowly down the plate. She still swims. She still steers. After a fashion, slow ahead. Her head held not quite into the seas now, because not quite is all the steam she has. And then the last thing, and it comes the way you knew it would come, from man to man. mouth to ear, down the length of her in the dark. You are back in the aft passageway when the word arrives there. A wheelsman off watch brings it. Come the whole 500 feet through the alleys. And he stops in the door of the mess where the off watch is braced and gathered. And his face has weather on it and something else. And the room quits moving to look at him. And he says it in 4 words. She is cracked amidships. Hatch 17. A deck seam started alongside the coaming of hatch 17. Out there, in the middle of her long back, letting go rivet by rivet. And the man who found it heard it before he saw it. And what he saw, in lantern light between seas, was the crack working, opening a finger width when the 2 hills of water picked her up by the ends, closing again as she came off them. Breathing, nobody in the mess room says a word for a moment. Then the older fireman, the one who tips his head, asks the only question there is it running? And the wheelsman says the true answer, which is that nobody can tell, and that is the whole horror of it in one sentence. A crack that has stopped is an injury, a crack that is running, working its way across her deck plates, a rivet at a time toward her sides, is a countdown. And there is no man aboard who can look at that seam in the dark and the ice and the flying water and say which one this is. The room takes it. Boots shift. Somebody's cup, somewhere, taps against steel, and it is right then, on top of that silence, that the door at the end of the passageway opens, and there is a man in it with a hurricane lantern turned low, and the light swings with the ship, and the cold comes down the passage ahead of him. And you have been here before. You were lying in your bunk when this door opened, a boy asleep in heavy weather. And now you are standing in the passageway inside the same minute. And this time you know everything the lantern knows. He does not shout. He says it the way a man says the time of day. Everybody dressed. Everybody up. Right now. Where they gather is the aft deck house. In the alley, between the galley and the engine casing, the warmest sheltered place left aboard. And by the time you get there, with your coat buttoned wrong, most of her people are already in it. 25 is not many. Spread down 500 feet of working ship. It is a crowd in one passageway, the deck watch crusted with ice, the black gang steaming in the cold air, the cook in the galley door with the light behind him, the mates moving through with lanterns, and the life preservers come out of their lockers and go around, and the passageway fills with the sound of men helping each other into them, working buckles with wooden fingers, and there is almost no talking in it at all. The preservers are canvas blocks of cork, and you have walked past the locker that holds yours 100 times a day since October, and thought about it the way you think about your own coffin, which is to say, never. Now the cook himself cinches yours across your chest, hauling the straps like he is girthing a horse, and slaps you once on the sternum. Done. Next man. And the slap lands on the cork, and you feel it the way you would feel a knock on the door of a house you are standing outside of. Above you, on their chocks, on the boat deck, the lifeboats are still there. Everybody looks at them. Nobody looks at them long. They are there in the lantern light every time the snow thins. 2 open wooden boats, sheeted over in gray ice, so that the shape of them is going soft, like things left out in a yard for years, and the davits above them wear ice sleeves thick as a man's leg, and the falls, the ropes that would lower them, are frozen to the blocks in one welded mass. Understand what those boats are. This night, on this water, they are 22 feet of white oak. The seas running past this ship stand taller than the boats are long. To put one over the side, men with mallets would first have to beat a ton of ice off the gear, out on the open boat deck, in 80 miles of wind, and then lower her on frozen falls down the rolling side of a 500-foot ship into water no small boat lives in. Every man standing in this alley grew up on these lakes or has given his life to them, and every man does that arithmetic in his own head, standing in his cork, and comes out the same door. It happened tonight, that arithmetic, on this same lake, aboard a steamer named the William Nottingham, fighting down this same water in this same storm. They will tell it afterward. 3 men looked at the odds their own ship was giving them and volunteered for the boat to go for help, and the crew swung her out, and while she hung in the falls, a sea came up the ship's side and took the boat and the 3 men out of the tackles the way a hand wipes a shelf. The falls came back empty. That is the whole story. And it is not told to blacken those men who were brave in the direction they understood. And it will not be told aboard this ship tonight, because nobody aboard this ship knows it yet. It is told so you will know what the lifeboats of 1913 are worth on this lake in this storm, and what the old man knows they are worth, and what he means by what he does next. He comes aft himself, down the tunnel alley with a lantern, in his seacoat with the ice on the shoulders of it, and the crowd in the passageway makes room, and he stands where the most of them can see him, and he looks around at his people, the shovel hands and the wheel hands and the boy, and what he says once, in the voice he uses for the time of day, and it is the longest anybody aboard has ever heard him speak. As long as she floats, he says, "This ship is the best lifeboat on Lake Huron. We are going to keep her head up as well as she will let us. And we are going to take her in toward the Michigan shore. And we are going to put her on the bottom, where the bottom is close to the top." Then he looks around at them once more and says, the last of it, "She has carried us since Ohio. We will carry her the rest of the way." That is the whole speech. He goes forward again, into the dark, along the lifeline with 2 men, back the 500 feet to the wheelhouse where Sully is standing into the spokes. You feel her come around, slow, a point at a time, the engine giving her all the half-strength it has. And every man aft stands in the alley, feeling the seas change their angle on her, feeling them come now on her quarter, lifting her stern in long 6 swoops as she runs off before them, cracked amidships, iced to the rails, Mutter, half blind, making for a shore that lies invisible somewhere off her bow under the whirl. It is not a course to a harbor. There is no harbor in it. It is a course to the shallows. And everybody in the alley knows what the shallows will do to her. And everybody in the alley is with him to a man, because the shallows are ground, and the deep is the deep. The cook goes back into his galley and fills the pot the rest of the way and settles it down into the sand with both hands. He does the arithmetic out loud. To nobody. To his range. It may be an hour, he says. It may be 4. They will want it hot when it happens. And he sets the lid. Gentle. The way your mother used to bank the stove at night. In another world. On land. When you were small, and the wind was a thing that stayed outside the walls. Running for the shore takes hours. And they are the strangest hours of the whole storm. Because they are the quiet ones. Quiet in the ears, they are not. The wind has lost nothing. And the seas come up under her quarter in those long 6 swoops. One after another. Hour on hour. Quiet in the ship herself. There is nothing left aboard to argue about. Her course is set. Her people are in their cork. The coffee is in the sand. And the only work remaining is the oldest work there is. Waiting. And men wait in the ways they were each built to. The cook wipes down a range that is already clean. The older fireman sits with his back against the warm engine casing and his eyes shut. His head tipping a half-inch with every swoop, like a man riding a slow train. In the boarded wheelhouse, 500 feet forward. Sully steers his last trick at the wheel of his last ship. Blind, on compass and feel, with the old man's hand coming onto his shoulder now and again, when a big one lifts her stern, and no words passing between them at all. Because after 30 years on this water, there are none needed and none left. You wait in the aft alley with the others, and you learn what waiting is. The mind will not hold still for it. It goes out and checks things and comes back. It counts the swoops. It listens for the seam at hatch 17. Out there in the dark amidships, breathing its finger width with every pair of hills that picks her up. And there is no man aft who is not listening to that seam through the soles of his boots. And no man who will say so. Somewhere in those hours you find you have been thinking about the tin cup, loose in your cabin, tapping around the floor in the dark by itself, and you think about going for it. 1 minute. There and back. You do not go. And the not going sits in your chest with a weight out of all proportion to a dented cup. And you are 18, and you have just met the true shape of what the lake takes from men. It takes the errands. It takes the there and back. Twice in those hours, the depth of the water speaks. The mates are sounding now when the seas allow. A man on the lee side with the hand lead, swinging the weight out ahead of her and reading the line. The oldest instrument on earth, older than compasses. A lump of lead and a length of marked cord. And the numbers he calls come aft, man to man, like everything comes aboard her now. The numbers are getting smaller. The lake under her keel, which was 30 fathoms, and then 20, is coming up to meet her. 5 fathoms at a time, and every smaller number moves down the passageway through the waiting men, and changes the silence a shade. Because the bottom coming up is the shore coming out, and the shore is the whole hope, and the shore is going to hit her like a train. When it comes from underneath, and it is like nothing the storm has done all night. Every blow so far has been water. Water is a fist, but a fist wrapped in itself, a giving thing at the last instant. This is not a giving thing. She is swooping down the face of a quartering sea, deep in the trough of it, and her bottom touches Michigan. And the touch comes up through her frames, as a grinding shriek. Steel dragged across stone, a sound with edges on it, and the deck kicks under your boots hard enough to buckle your knees. And down the whole length of her rises a groan that is not the seam groan. That is her entire body speaking at once. And then the sea lifts her off it, and she swims again. Nobody in the alley says a word. Every hand has found something to grip. She touches twice more, each one harder, each grinding longer. The lake, setting her down on the stone shoulder of the shore and snatching her up and setting her down again. The way a wave plays with a plank at a beach, except the plank is 500 feet of steel with 25 souls in her. And on the fourth sea, or the fifth, the lake sets her down and does not pick her back up. She stops. The stopping is the loudest thing of the whole night, and it is silent. A night of motion, of climb and hang and fall, of swoop and roll, ends in one endless grinding slide that stalls and holds, and you are standing on a floor that is not moving. It is canted. It has a list to starboard, and a droop aft you can read through your feet. And it shudders whole every few seconds as the seas break against her exposed side. But underneath the shudder it is still, ground still, stone still, and your body goes on, riding swells that are not there, leaning against nothing. And around the alley, in the lantern light, men are grabbing for handholds against a roll that never comes. And the world has gone motionless underfoot. And it is the strangest feeling any man aboard has ever stood inside of. The seas find her at once. And now she is a reef. They break over her amidships, clean across the deck, one after another, white in the dark, exploding against the deckhouse. You can hear tearing up there now, ventilators going, gear going, pieces of her being peeled and carried off into the world. And she takes it all without answering, dead on the stone, listening, and the men look at each other in the lantern light. And the question moves through the alley without one voice raising it, whether stopping was the end of dying or the start of it, whether the seam at 17 holds now or opens now, with her ends on rock and the seas working her middle, whether she will break where she lies, and then the engine stops. It does not die. It is put down. The telegraph rings faint and far forward, one last time, and the answer gong sounds below, and the engineers do the last office, easing her, closing her off, and the beat that has run under your bunk and your meals and your sleep and your fear since Ohio, the walking of the giant, the heart under everything, slows and spaces itself out and stops. You have never heard the ship without it. No man aboard has heard the ship without it. The silence that comes up out of the engine room fills her from the keel up like cold water. And in that silence, the storm sounds twice as large. The wind and the seas breaking on her, and the small tearing sounds aloft. And under all of it, for the first time, a new sound, close aboard, off her bow, somewhere in the whiteout, a long, low, booming roar going on and on without any rhythm at all. The older fireman opens his eyes. That is, surf, he says. Breakers, water dying on a shore, land, close enough to hear. Nobody moves toward the sound. There is nothing in the sound to move toward. No shape, no light, no distance. Just the roar in the whirl. And it might be 100 yards off her bow, and it might be a mile. And in between is water that no boat and no swimmer would live 1 minute in. And every man in the alley stands listening to the nearness of the one thing they have wanted all night. And it might as well be Ohio. The cook comes to the galley door and looks at his crew, at the cork and the lanterns and the listening. Coffee is hot, he says. There is nothing to do. That is the fact of the night. And it takes each man a different while to arrive at it. And it is the hardest fact of the whole storm. Since the snow started, there has always been the next thing. Steer her, feed her fires, seal her, sound her, run hair in. Men can spend themselves against a next thing forever. Now she lies broken on the stones with the seas breaking over her amidships. And the engine is cold, and the boats cannot swim, and the shore cannot be seen, and nobody ashore knows she is here, and there is no next thing left on the list. And 25 people come to the end of that list, one at a time in the lantern light, and stand there looking at what is past it. What is past it is the rest of the night. It has to be gotten through, and there is nothing to get through it with. So the ship's people do the last work there is, which is to arrange themselves for it. And it happens with almost no orders given. They go forward. Her stern took the stone hardest and sits lowest, and the water is working in her after spaces. And so the crew moves up the tilted alleys toward her bow, which stands highest. The whole crowd of them in their cork, with lanterns and blankets off the bunks, and they settle in the forward quarters, in the windless room and the passage behind it, the highest, driest hole in her. And it is a steel room over an anchor chain. And it is home now. Men pack in, along the wall, on the deck, shoulder to shoulder for the animal heat of it. The blankets go around. The 2 lanterns are trimmed low and set where they cannot fall. And the cook comes forward last along the inside of her, with the coffee got somehow the whole 500 feet, and goes around the room with it, half a cup at a time, into whatever a man holds out. And to the boy with no cup, he hands his own tin one off his own belt, and makes nothing of it, and moves on. The room settles, and the night sets in. And this is the part of the story that has no story in it. And it is the part that was always coming. And it is the part the whole telling has been for. You sit against cold steel, with a blanket around you and another man's shoulder against each of yours. And you learn the sounds of a dead ship in a live storm. The seas come against her side on their old 8-second count, and she takes each one with a flat boom and a shudder that runs through the plates into your back. And she does not roll away from them anymore, because she cannot. She just stands and takes them. And between the blows, you can hear the water moving in her aft somewhere. A deep, slow sloshing, like something breathing in another room. Aloft, the wind screams in what the ice has made of her rigging. And under everything, steady, patient. The surf goes on booming off her bow. The shore talking in its sleep. The nearest and farthest sound on earth. Nobody talks. Talk has a cost now, and there is nothing to buy with it. The cold comes up through the deck plates, through the blanket, through you. This is a different cold from the knife cold of the open deck. A patient cold, a stone cold, the cold of steel with lake on the other side of it. And it finds the wet in your boots and settles there. And men draw their knees up and put their hands in their armpits and get small. The whole room getting small together. And somebody's teeth go for a while and stop. And here is what the body does. In cork and wet boots. On a broken ship. On a stone. In a storm. Here is the secret nobody tells about nights like this. It sleeps. You would swear it cannot. You would swear no man in that iron room shuts an eye. And if you asked them after, most would swear they never did. And all night long, all around that room, men are dropping off the edge of the world for a minute. 3 minutes. 10. Chins going down onto cork collars. Breath going long and rough. And jerking back up at the next boom with their hands already gripping. And looking around and finding the lanterns still burning and the room still there. And going down again. The body does not ask permission. It has been standing watches since Ohio. Hauling and freezing and fearing, and somewhere past the end of everything, it simply begins taking what it is owed, a minute at a time, blow by blow. Remedy, and no storm on earth can stand between a worked-out man and that collecting. You fight it the longest, because you are 18, and you have an idea that somebody ought to be awake. As if your waking were a rope holding something. Sully is beside you. He came aft with the old man when the wheel had nothing left to steer. And he has his place against the plates, with his blanket around him like a horse trader at a depot. And he is awake. His eyes are shut, and he is awake. And you can tell by his hand. The left one, the numb one, is lying flat against the steel of her side, palm down, fingers spread, riding the shudder of every sea. And he has been listening to ships through that hand for 30 years. And he is listening to his last one now. You watch the hand in the lantern light for a long time. Then, because you are who you are, you put your own hand flat on the plate beside his and feel what he is feeling. The boom, the shudder, the long grind deep down where she works against the stone, and the old man opens his eyes and looks at you, and looks at your hand on her side, and something goes over his face that is not quite a smile. And he says the last thing anybody says out loud that night. You feel her holding. He says, she has quit fighting it. She is just holding now. He shuts his eyes again. And after a while, with your hand still on the cold plate, feeling her take the seas one at a time, hold and shoulda and hold, somewhere in there, between one blow and the next, with no permission asked and none given. You go down too. You sleep, in your cork, in your boots, against the steel, with your hand on the ship. The blows keep coming. She holds under your hand in the dark, blow after blow after blow, and holds, and holds. And what wakes you, in the end, is not a sound at all. What wakes you is a sea that does not arrive. You come up out of sleep into a hole in the world, and you lie against the steel, waiting for the next blow. And it does not come. Then it comes, and it is small. That is the first fact of Monday morning, arriving through your hand, which has stayed on her plates all night without your knowing. The seas are still running, still breaking against her side, but the weight has gone out of them, the shudder behind each one shorter, shallower, and the wind aloft has come down out of its scream into something with rises and falls in it again. A wind that breathes, a wind of this earth. Around the iron room, men are surfacing one at a time the same way you did, lifting their heads, listening, saying nothing, checking the thing each man checks first. The lanterns, still burning. The room, still there. The ship under them, still holding. And the portholes are gray, not black, not white, gray. A weak dishwater gray. The first skylight any man aboard has seen since the snow closed over her yesterday afternoon. And it lies on the frosted glass like light under a door. And nobody in that room says the word morning out loud. And there is a reason, saying it might be found to be wrong. The mate goes around with the muster. He does it plainly, with the crew list from the office folded in his fist. And this is the moment nobody aboard has spoken of, and every man aboard has been carrying since she struck. 25 came up the rivers. The night just ended was full of falling gear and boarding seas and men strung down 500 feet of breaking ship, and no count has been possible in the dark. And now the mate stands in the gray light and reads the names, one at a time, and waits on each one. The room answers him, name and answer, name and answer. The engineers, the firemen, Reggie's voice thick with smoke, the deck watch, the wheelsman, the cook, who answers with his chin up like a man daring the list to say different. Twice the mate calls a name, and there is a beat of nothing. One beat, long enough for the whole room to go still around it. And then the answer comes from a far corner, or from a man half deaf with wind, and the room lets its breath go. And the mate ticks his paper and goes on. He gets to the end. He counts the ticks with his thumbnail, once down the page, and once again. Then he folds the paper and puts it inside his coat. And he does not make a speech either. He is the old man's mate, all right. And what he says is 5 words. All hands, 25 souls. Nobody cheers. You will wonder at that afterward, telling it. And the truth is, a cheer would have been too small. What happens instead is that men look at each other around the whole iron room in the gray light. Men in cork and blankets simply look at one another, faces black with coal and stubble, eyes red as fire doors. And what passes between them has no word for it. And then the cook says that if all hands are so lively they can line up for bread, and the room breaks into its pieces and becomes a crew again, on deck, in the daylight. You see what you wrote out? She is a wreck, and she is a marvel, both at once. Her stack is gone off her, clean, a torn stub. Her boats are staved on their chocks. Every ventilator forward is bent flat or gone. Her rails carry ice a foot thick. Her cabins are sheathed gray, like something raised off the bottom of the sea. And amidships, along the coaming of hatch 17, the men stand around the seam in the daylight and look at it the way farmers look at a lightning scar on a barn still standing. And she is on the stone shoulder of Michigan, with her head northwest. Holding, listed, done, and the seas break against her weather side and fall back beaten. The snow has thinned to squalls, and in a gap between squalls, off her bow, the shore comes out, low, white, treed with black, running away on both hands, with the surf shelving against it in long gray lines. It is close. It is so close, it makes men laugh angrily. One bark apiece. It sat there all night, that close, while 25 people rode a cracking hull in the dark a few hundred yards off its beach. And neither one of them could see the other or do a thing about it. There are figures on the beach, small and dark against the snow, moving along the surf line and then stopping, all of them at once, the way men stop when they have seen something. And aboard the ship the crew crowds her high rail and waves, coats, blankets, arms, and one of the figures ashore raises both arms overhead and holds them there. And across a few hundred yards of killing water, two sets of strangers stand telling each other the same single thing, saying, "You are seen." Then somebody aboard does the right thing, the perfect thing, and it is not an officer. One of the deckhands goes up to the frozen bell forward, her own bell, the one the wind ate last night, and he breaks the ice off the mouth of it with a mallet, and he takes hold of the clapper with his bare hand, and he strikes it once, then again, slow, spaced, unhurried, no count of the watch in it, no time of day, just the bell speaking out over the water in the gray morning because she has a voice again and there is finally somebody to hear it. And the sound goes out across the surf to the figures on the beach, and it comes back off the low shore faint, doubled, the way the whistle salute came back off the Canadian bank yesterday morning in the river, and men stand on the canted deck with their eyes running. And it is the wind, and everybody says it is the wind. The taking off is work, and it takes most of the day, and it belongs to the shore men. They are fishermen and farmers and storekeepers from the towns along that point, and men of the life-saving crews who have pulled people out of this lake for 30 years with oars and horses and their own backs, and they work the problem all morning. And the problem yields, the way problems yield to men like that, a piece at a time. A line comes aboard, then a heavier line, and in the afternoon, in the slackening sea, the boats begin to come, deep loaded, timing the surf, and her crew goes down to them, a few men at a trip, engineers and firemen and wheelsmen handed down her iced side by their own shipmates. And you go in your turn with the cook's tin cup buttoned in your coat. And Sully goes in the boat with you. And he looks back at her the whole way in. Your boots touch Michigan in the last light of the afternoon, on sand and snow, with the surf spent around your ankles. And hands take your arms, shore hands, strangers, and you stand there, and the world holds still under you. That is the thing no one warns a sailor of. The ground does not move. You stand on the beach with your legs braced against a roll that is never coming, and the stillness runs up through your boots like a sound, and you look back at her, lying black and iced on the stone with the last squalls blowing through her broken rigging. 500 feet of ship that took the worst night on the recorded lake and put every one of her people on the beach alive. Somebody's wife from the town puts hot coffee into your hands. You look down into the cup, and your eyes go on past it to the sand. And you stand there in the wind, on the unmoving earth, 18 years old. And you cannot, for your life, work out why you are crying now. On the beach. Saved. When you never once did it out there. They put the crew up in the town that night, in houses and over the store, and feed them to bursting. And the crew sleeps like dead men in real beds that hold still. And in the morning it begins. The news. It comes the way news came in 1913, which is to say, in pieces, by wire. And the pieces do not fit each other. And the town gathers around each piece as it arrives. The storm did not happen to one ship. That is what Tuesday teaches you. Standing in a store that smells of kerosene and apples, reading a telegraph form nailed to the door frame. It happened to the whole lake at once, to every lake at once, and all over that country, in port offices and company rooms and kitchens from Duluth to Buffalo. The same arithmetic is being worked. Ships sailed Saturday and Sunday. Ships were due Monday and Tuesday. And some of the ships have not come. At first, that means nothing. And everyone says so, loudly, to each other. Boats shelter. Boats anchor behind points and islands and ride it out and come limping in 2 days late with their boats gone and their cook swearing. It happens every November. And through the middle of the week, the overdue boats come in, one after another, battered and iced and whole. And each one that comes in is a name crossed off a list somewhere, and a kitchen somewhere that starts breathing again, but the list does not empty. The list gets shorter, and then it stops getting shorter. You ride down to Port Huron at the end of the week with Sully and half the crew, to the company office, to be paid off and sent home. And Port Huron is a lake town in a black week. And you see it all in an afternoon. The knots of men outside the newspaper office, reading the chalked board, saying little, the women in twos, the flags in the town standing at the middle of their poles, and in the window of the shipping office, written large on butcher paper, the lists, vessels arrived, vessels sheltering, reported safe, and the third list, the one the knots of men stand in front of longest, with a word at the top of it that the man who wrote it chose carefully, and the word is missing. They are not missing. That is the thing the whole shore knows by the end of the week, and cannot yet bring itself to chalk on a board. The lake has begun giving its answer down the beaches. It started while you were still aboard her, waiting on the boats, all down the Canadian shore of the lower lake, in the surf at Goderich and Kincardine and the little places between. The storm's mail has been coming in. Wreckage, oars and hatch covers and pieces of white-painted boat with names lettered on them, and the men themselves, in their cork, delivered ashore in 2s and 3s along the sand, quiet, face down, with ice in their hair, and the farmers finding them at first light and covering them with coats and going for the wagon. 8 ships went down on Lake Huron in that one night. Nobody who was not there can be told what that night was, and you were there. And you cannot be told either, because your ship lived. Their names go into the papers that week in hard black type. And they go into you for good. The Wexford, out of Ireland long ago, lost with all hands, the Argus and the Hydrus, sister ships, lost with all hands, within miles of each other, as near as anyone can figure. The John A. McGean, big and near new. All hands. The Isaac M. Scott, all hands. The Regina, all hands. The Charles S. Price, all hands. Across all the lakes together. The storm took more than 250 people on Lake Huron alone. In the worst hours of Sunday night, 8 ships and 187 souls. And you spent those same hours hauling hot water to a blind wheelhouse and thinking your boat was the whole world. You read it standing in the street. Then you fold the paper, and you cannot hold the number, and you quit trying. What you can hold is what the number will not say. That every one of those ships had a galley at the stern with the dishes riding face down. That every one had a night pail going down to the black gang, and a wheelsman leaning into the spokes, reading the seas through his hands, and a boy somewhere aboard, first season or second, with his boots stood against the wall where his feet could find them. You know what their Sunday night was, minute by minute, all the way up to the minute yours turned one way and theirs turned the other. And no man who was on Lake Huron that night ever has to imagine it. And no man who was not ever can. For the better part of a week, one of them has no name at all. That is the strangest grief of that strange month. And the whole country takes it up. There is a ship lying in the south end of the lake, hull up, black, riding low. Her people gone, her name plates underwater, and the papers call her the mystery ship, and tugs go out and circle her, and men argue her length and her lines in every waterfront saloon on the lakes, and for day after day, nobody on God's earth can say which of the missing she is. Wives of the crews of 3 different ships wear out the company stares asking, it is a hard thing when a town does not know which town should be grieving. A diver goes down at last, along her cold side in the cold water, and reads her name with his hand. You are in the office in Port Huron the day the word comes through, waiting on the pay clerk with Sully ahead of you in the line, and a man puts his head in from the wire room and says it to the whole room without ceremony. The way heavy news travels fastest. The mystery ship is the price. The Charles S. Price, upbound with coal, turned clean over with all 28 of her people. The room takes it quietly. Most of the men in the line are lakemen, and every ship on that black list has faces in it for somebody. You look at Sully. He is at the counter with his season's pay half counted out in front of him, and he has gone still, and you stand behind him and watch his back, and you can see it come to him. The pipe, the lifted cap, the $1.25 riding at no interest since Sarnia, 1911, the upbound salute in the river, 1 long and 2 short, answered kindly. Sunday morning, 2 days ago, and 1 whole world ago. He finishes counting his money. He is a long time doing it, and his hands are level. And the clerk waits without a word, because the clerk has been watching men count money in this room all week. Then Sully squares the bill, and folds them away in his coat, and puts on his cap, and he says thank you to the clerk, and he walks out of the office, past the butcher paper lists, and into the street. And whatever there was between him and the man with the pipe, the lake has closed its books on it, and Sully never once says that man's name in your hearing again. Not that afternoon, not at the depot, not ever. You are paid off. You shake hands along the line. Reggie bound for Cleveland and his girl. The cook bound wherever cooks go in the winter. The mate to Alpena, to look at 40 acres with a creek through the low corner. And 2 days later, you are on the eastbound train with your pay sewed into your coat, going home for the winter. And the line runs for a while where you can see the lake. It is the last week of November now. The sun is out. Lake Huron lies flat away to the horizon, pale blue, patient, with the light moving on it, soft as breath, as flat and mild a piece of water as there is anywhere under heaven. And there is no mark on it of any kind, anywhere. As far as a man can see, you watch it through the glass for a long time. Then the tracks bend away into the timber, and the lake goes out of the window, and you lean your head against the cold glass and shut your eyes, and the train carries you down into the country, away from the water, with the wheels on the rail joints striking slow and even in the dark under the floor, like a bell being struck, like a count being kept, all the way home. The ship had a name through all of it, and it is time you heard it. She was the Howard M. Hanna Jr. out of Cleveland. 500 feet of steel, launched 5 years before that November. And that is the name the papers printed under the photographs that winter. The big freighter lying broken on the stone off Port Austin, with her stack gone and her cabins sheathed in ice. That is the name. The 25 people who walked off her carried, folded up inside them for the rest of their lives. And that is the name to remember through everything that happens next. Because everything that happens next is hers. She spends the winter where the lake put her. She lies on the reef through December and January and February. Listed, iced, empty, with the gales breaking over her and the shore ice building out until it reaches her and takes hold. And she becomes part of the winter itself, a black and white landmark. And the people of the towns along that point look out at her every morning the way you look at a mountain, to see what the weather is doing to it. And then a thing happens that nobody plans and everybody understands. The coal, she went ashore with her holds nearly full of it. Thousands of tons of Ohio, bought and paid for by somebody far away, bound for the head of the lakes. And now it is sitting in a broken ship a few hundred yards off a Michigan beach in the coldest winter anybody on that point can remember. And the winter is long, and the towns are small, and stoves want feeding. So they come out to her on foot when the shore ice sets firm, with sleds and barrows and grain sacks and pails, farmers and fishermen and their boys, out across the ice in the hard blue mornings, up her frozen side, and down into her holds with lanterns, and they carry her cargo away, a pailful at a time. Nobody reads a meter on it. A man takes what his stove needs and hauls it home. And all along that point, all that winter, in kitchens where the men who rowed the surf boats sit down to their suppers. The fires burning in the stoves are burning her coal. The last cargo of the season, delivered after all, not to the port on the bill of lading. To the people who came down to the beach, you hear about it secondhand, in a letter, and you read that part twice, and you fold the letter away, and you have no word for what it makes you feel. And you have never needed one. Some accounts settle themselves. In the spring, the wreckers come for her. Everybody along the shore says she is done, and the underwriters half say it too. And the men who go out to look at her in April walk her canted decks and sound her plates and look a long time at the seam by hatch 17. And they come ashore and say she can be saved. It takes them into the summer. Pumps and patches and lighters, alongside taking out what is left of the coal, and tugs standing off her, working the lake's grip loose, 1 inch at a time. And there is a day, in the warm weather, when she comes off the stone at last and floats on her own bottom, streaked with rust, scarred down her whole length, riding light and high like something let out of a harness. They tow her in, and dock her, and rebuild her, and she goes back to work. That is the plain end of it. And it is the part you could never have invented on the beach that Monday. Watching her take the surf with her stack gone, she sails again. She sails the next season and the one after that. She changes owners the way Lifeboats do, and changes her name with them more than once. And under the new names and the new paint, she goes on carrying coal and ore and grain up and down the lakes through every November for year upon year upon year, decade upon decade. Through wars and hard times and everything else, the century keeps in its pockets. And the seam at 17 holds. She outlives the storm by 70 years. She outlives the men who rowed her through it. Everyone. Sully, who kept his word and went ashore for good, and woke at the half hours in his sister's house in Port Huron, listening. Reggie, married in the spring in Cleveland, as advertised. The cook, and the mate with his 40 acres, and the old man with his dry boots, and in the fullness of years, the deckhand too. The boy, you, grown old somewhere far inland, with a dented tin cup on a shelf that your grandchildren know better than to touch, and were never once told why. She outlives them all. And the breakers' torches do not touch her until 1983, 70 years on, when she is cut up at last for her steel, an old lady from another world entirely. And by then, there is hardly a soul alive who felt what her plates felt on the 9th of November. 1913. The others are still there. That has to be said too, quietly, the way everything true gets said. The Price, the Regina, the Wexford, the Scott, the McGean, the Argus, the Hydrus, they are down there now, tonight, in the dark of Lake Huron, in the cold, fresh water that keeps things, some of them found and dived on and known, some of them hidden for the better part of a century before anyone laid eyes on them again, and the water above them freezes and opens, year over year. And in November, the wind still comes down the long axis of the lake and builds its seas mile by mile. the same wind, working the same water. And somewhere tonight, this very night, there is a bunk on a working freighter in the middle of that water. The steel is newer, and the lights are electric, and the weather comes in off a satellite now. And none of that changes the oldest facts aboard. The bunk is bolted to the wall. The wall is an inch of steel. On the other side of the steel is Lake Huron, going by in the dark, a few inches from the sleeping man's ear, hissing along the plates. Patient as ever, his boots are standing against the wall where his feet can find them. The galley aft smells of coffee. The dishes are riding face down. The watch changes at the bells. 4 on and 4 off, around and around. And a young one is up there, somewhere in the warm wheelhouse, dark. Second season, learning the water from an old one who talks to the windshield glass. And the lake lies flat away on every side of them under the stars, mild as milk, keeping its own counsel about everything it has done and everything it holds. The lake is flat tonight. The glass is steady. Lie still now. You are aboard, and the engine is turning, far down, even as a heart, and the water is going by along the plates with a sound like a long, soft breath. And morning will come the way it has always come to sailors, the way it came even that November, even to her, one bell at a time,